So we're looking at Meria, the
Scholar of Antiquity.
Scholar of Antiquity.
Scholar of Antiquity. Meria, Scholar of Antiquity.
Scholar of Antiquity.
Did you forget the name of the card we were doing?
I gotta be honest, I don't remember the whole name of the card. I just know the name of the commander.
I just know it's Meria.
Like
Yeah,
first
same.
name.
I know by color pairing's bad, but it's like at least worth remembering. Come on.
It's like Borborygmos is your deck, right? Like
Wait, like Borborygmos or like Borborygmos enraged or
One from Innistrad.
I don't know. I can
I would love in an unset for the next Borborygmos to be Borborygmos and aroused, and it's just some sort of like very clearly turned on Borborygmos.
No, it's just like Borborygmos apathetic. You just like leave me alone.
there's like Borbor. It's Borborygmos
Borborygmos has come to terms with what he's processed.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Mind Sculptors podcast. I am your host, Callahan. On today's episode, special guest Surreal joined myself, Cobblepot, and Ian to take a closer look at the newest Gruul Commander from Dominaria United, Meria, Scholar of Antiquity. This Brewer's Choice episode was a ton of fun to record, and we all had a ton of thoughts on this new commander. So much so that we weren't able to fit all of this conversation and all of our thoughts into this single episode. So, if you want to hear all of our thoughts on Meria, as well as some of the jokes and tangents that didn't make it into this cut, head on over to patreon.com/mindsculptors and support us there to get access to the full uncut video discussion. Also, before we get into today's episode, I want to remind you that Oktoberfest is right around the corner on November 18th through the 20th in Philadelphia. So if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, make sure to get registered over at monarch.cards. If you're unfamiliar with this event, it's a cEDH tournament in Philadelphia that is raising money for St. Jude Children's Hospital, and it's put on by the same people who did Marchesa earlier this year in Seattle. I will be there doing an intro to cEDH panel on that Friday the 18th with Lewis Stardust, Dan from Moderately Anonymous MTG, and Dylan and Cam from Play to Win. Marchesa earlier this year was a total blast, and I can't wait to get to see you all again here in a few weeks. So if you haven't yet signed up, head on over to monarch.cards to get registered today. With all of that said, let's get into today's Brewer's Choice episode with Cobblepot, Ian, and Surreal. Have you seen how much that fucking Mind Goblin is worth, by the way? It's like $37 for like one of the foils.
Oh, well, it's foil.
Yeah, but even like the regular ones, like
guess who might have spec'd on that one?
Did you spec on that?
Yeah, did you actually?
No.
Oh my god.
I was like, people were like talking about it as like, oh wait, there's actually like legitimate uses of it, and I was like, all right, cool, I'll buy the shitty goblin. I don't really want it, but whatever. And now it's like $40.
So
how many did you get?
Just one.
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask, can we have
that was quite the spec.
Can that be yeah. Hell of a spec. Buys one.
Did it
Sorry, for me buying a single copy of a card that I have zero desire to play is specking.
Valid. Now we all have to get one.
I bought a play set of Ledger Shredders when they came out because I was like, this is going to be good.
Yeah.
And I bought them for, I
did that with Finale.
Shit you not, my Ledger Shredders, I bought them for $0.25 a piece.
I got Finale of Devastations when they were $5 a pop.
Yeah. I think I opened
and I got a play set of those, and I was like, and then after, because I looked at it, I was like, unconditional tutor regardless of color, and it also hits graveyards and it's an infinite mana outlet. How does this not get played in literally everything with green?
Well, it's interesting because with the green deck that we have been presented with today, Ian, Surreal, and I have been talking about this commander for 2 months. 2 months
since we met
in person.
Yeah, basically.
And this is an interesting one because it's Meria, Scholar of Antiquity, and if you're unfamiliar with what this card does,
it sucks.
It is deceiving how powerful the ability actually is, if you ask me. Because I think when you read the card, your immediate thought is, "Oh my God, this is insane. This is like akin to Urza." And then you actually read the card, and then you it comes back down to earth. And so the abilities on this, we covered this in our Dominaria United set review, but we'll just read it one more time. It is a 3/3 elf artificer that costs a colorless, a red, and a green. Has 2 activated abilities on it that say tap an untapped non-token artifact you control, and you add green mana.
Yeah, let's not forget that part.
And then the second ability is tap 2 untapped non-token artifacts you control. Exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. So it's kind of got that.
And both of those abilities are without a tap symbol. So they operate
yes, true.
like Earthcraft and Azami and the other, summoning sickness, forgetting activations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're going to hear a lot of us probably in this cast comparing this to Urza. And a lot of it, I think, is going to be about this is not Urza. And everyone who kind of wants it to be Urza is about to be arguably deeply disappointed in a lot of ways because it's not. Urza, this is not, because any number of different reasons.
The main thing, I would think the main reason why it's not Urza is because it says non-token.
If I actually, I'm going to make an argument as to why that's not the primary reason, despite that's what it's on the text. Like the text box itself says non-token, right? And that's the biggest issue.
It would be so much face better level if it didn't say
it would, but I think it would. And we'll get into this here in a bit, but I think it would still run into the same brick wall that it's running into now, because it's it would definitely make a dent in the brick wall. It would leave a mark. Yes. But I don't think it's crashing through the brick wall. I
think the difference between it being a dockside outlet and not being a dockside outlet is like the word non-token, right? Like that part alone is pretty huge. So like that's just like one of the many reasons that we're hearing a little nuance to this argument here. There's a lot to it for sure. And I think to start it off, we're sounding a little negative to a reflection of this card. It's still a very exciting card, and it still does a lot of unique stuff. But I think it is important that we're tailoring the expectation, as I think all of us got really excited about this card, went, I'm not that excited about this card. But now where we're at with these lists, I think they're sort of like the middle rebound lists, right? They're not, no, I don't think this is Urza level good, but this is where it's at now and the future holds potential.
Right.
So before we get into the lists, actually, I wanted to, because all of the lists are going to be very different, I wanted to, in my mind at least, dealing with the aspect of what the hell is in the command zone feels important, because it gives character and context to why these lists look like they do. And I think like the oof, there's that oof versus there's oof to oof or not to oof, right?
Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of non-artifact
arrows of outrageous fortune.
Yeah. So I think I want to start with here's Meria, right? And Meria has a couple of different things going for it and not going for it. Number one, it does the same thing as Urza does, where it breaks parity really well on a number of stacks pieces. You're also in colors that make a lot of mana comfortably, even outside of artifacts. You then get into the issue of, so like that's +1, right? And nothing to be said for the fact that instead of paying 5 mana like you would in Urza, you get to tap 2 artifacts. So call it tapping 2 mana, and you get to exile, you get to impulse draw. This is fantastic. You've got card draw, you've got ramp in the command zone. You've got a convenient way to break parity on stacks pieces. There's a lot to like there. And then you get to the push and pull of, okay, oof or not oof. And I think we're going to see tonight that we're going to fall on either side of that line.
Let's get into these lists here. So first off, let's look at Cobblepot's list. Cobble's is called Gurza Landfall, and you look like just a brief like exploration of your list. It looks like you are doing a little bit of the like mono green win con packages, a little bit of the like, Kiki Jiki stuff. Take us through this list, the high level concept of this list.
Okay, so it's a tap lock list, which is one of the main attractions that people see when they first look at either Urza or Meria is, Winter Orb and Static Orb. I can just turn those off by tapping them and stuff like that. And that's great, but you need to, it's not enough just because Dockside exists. You
need to actually win the game.
You need to not only be able to keep your opponents from untapping, you have to tap things down. So there's the lock and there's the tap. So this is running things like Root Maze and Orb of Dreams and Mana Web.
Hot. I love that.
Those kinds of things that are what they do is they detract from the tempo of the table. They make things go much slower. If you've ever tried to use a fetch land through Root Maze, that's absolute agony. And we break parity with that using Amulet of Vigor and Tiller Engine, and that wounds up, it on the one hand lets us break parity, but actually lets us even accelerate, because if we can copy those effects, then we untap twice for every land that comes into play or every artifact that comes into play, which then lets us perform some more degenerate kind of stuff. But that's kind of the main line is to, for each of the ways that people get resources, either if it's land-based, artifact-based, creature-based, we're trying to shut those avenues down and then make use of the best, in my opinion, card advantage that's available to these two colors, and I think that's through the landfall effects, and in particular Valakut Exploration, where
that card is
because
yeah, Valakut Exploration looks real good in no matter what power level you play it at, assuming that you can support it.
Right.
It just ends up not being supported at the higher levels,
right? And
because we're just not land based as much as lower levels.
If you can get there's lots of ways to exploit it. Like with welder effects and artifact lands and, various other things that
Crucible Worlds and fetch lands,
that kind of stuff. So, there's a lot of tricks that you can pull to exploit that and just, kill people with Valakut. But that's
I actually really like this just sort of concept in Gruul in general. I feel like it's probably not explored as much as one
very
would
much
like to think.
underexplored.
Right. And there's a sub theme that is getting a lot of utility from the liquid metal artifacts, the liquid metal torque and liquid metal coating, which is used defensively and offensively. So we can turn our opponent's lands into artifacts and then shoot them down with Gorilla Shaman or, with Karn and stuff like that, to, just create this huge disparity between what our opponents are able to do and what we're able to do. And we can also use, making your Magda into an artifact or making your Goblin Welder into an artifact so that your Clock of Omens can untap it every time it, refreshes something out of the graveyard and, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of ways to leverage in a very flexible kind of utility approach. And what that does is it's very unconventional. So people, especially in cEDH, are very they're very aware of rote kind of lines of play. And they know, someone's going to cast their Adnaz, and this is how I'm going to interact with this. Or someone's got a Thoracle on the stack. Okay, this is what you do. And it's those are kind of well-trod paths, and people understand how to interact with them to stop them. When you're doing things that are unconventional, then you're forcing people to not leverage their memory and the reps that they've gotten in. You're forcing them to think,
or truisms.
Right, they're thinking on the spot, and people make mistakes, and people tend to make more mistakes when they're put on the spot in an unconventional situation. So
it's the thing that Kirk
that.
Sakashima does a really good job of leveraging, right? Is that if this is different than anything else you're seeing, it's really complicated and it's hard to figure out where you're supposed to interact correctly. Next list we'll look at the high level of is Ave Meria. I see anytime any allusion to Ave Meria, I will now and forevermore think of the Batman, because I now just heavily associate that song with that movie.
Yeah, it was either Ave Meria or Meria Don't Stacks Me Out.
So when we look at your list, Surreal, your list now, and one thing is very interesting. All three of your lists are very different.
I also think it's worth mentioning that despite there being so many large gaps, we did work on the Ave Meria one specifically. Has been there was a lot of collaboration on that one. It is even within this podcast for sure.
Yeah, even with this podcast, there's been a lot of input back and forth. I actually think that. So I think there's 4 people on this podcast, and I think all 4 of us would have built this slightly differently. So my route is, for lack of a better term, boring. It is a pile. It is all of the highest card quality that I can shove into a deck in Gruul to start. So it wants to play to the color pair's strengths, and the commander almost functions as secondary. So it wants to play your Dockside, it wants to play Collector Oof, it wants to play Null Rod, and it wants to play as many creature-based wins and outlets as possible, because you don't have a way to search for artifacts in these colors. I opted for a Snoop pile. So mine is, here's a bunch of good red-green cards, and then once you get past that point, it says, hey, here's all of my artifacts, my stacks effects, and a couple of the best options for what Meria looks like and for the artifact selection. And then you go back up to the creature section and you say, how do I win the game?
And you just kind of shrug.
And that's with... you shrug because it's Snoop, which is about worth a shrug. But the benefit is that your commander does very comfortably crack your snoop pile, and the snoop pile feels dramatically better when you can very comfortably crack it out of the command zone. Yeah. And so that's sort of what my list is looking to leverage. Other than that, it's not really fancy. If you've seen my Ruikthar list on the database, this is going to look real similar because, Meria is not Ruikthar, but we're struggling so often for card quality in these colors that there's a very limited selection.
I mean, it goes back to what you were talking about earlier, right? Is it's Gruul. You only have so many options.
Yeah. There's always going to be, when evaluating power level and strength of a list, is your commander good enough to bypass the inefficiencies of its color? I have taken the route for this list where I'm trying to compensate for my color pairings weaknesses by playing the best in slot options I have, in addition to, and secondary, that is primary, and then secondary is how well can I support Meria within that shell. So I'm working within a shell and then trying to support Meria, as opposed to doing the reverse, where I try and support Meria first.
The Thar comparison is really interesting because what you're basically doing is you're taking, instead of I have to play like egregious amounts of ramp to get Thar out and have the stacks piece in the command zone, what you can say is instead I'm going to have a bunch of these stacks pieces in the 99 that I can break parity on, and there is some card advantage in Meria. It is hard to argue, impossible to argue it has more card advantage than Ruikthar, right? Because Ruikthar literally does not give you any card advantage.
And there's a lot to like there, but that's my list. Ian, what do you?
Hey, comedian. Hey, did you know that Ian was?
I can't believe you're actually doing this on another episode. I can't believe you're actually bringing this here. You say, "Hey, Ian, come back, record another episode with me. I'm gonna really just tell you to go fuck yourself."
I love you, buddy.
So much love, all the love in the world.
So you are doing KCI stuff, and for those of you who live in Kansas City, no, we're not talking about Kansas City International Airport.
That was such a niche, deep cut that you had to go for there.
So Clark Ironworks is a card
that you built your deck around, and kind of take us through exactly what you're doing here, because I see the junk diver and I see the scrap trawler. I see all the Teshar components. So what's going on exactly?
So to be clear, the reason this variant of this archetype exists is because my initial work on this deck is basically what Surreal has brought to us today. Now, that being said, I was working through my sort of like previous thoughts on Meria and stuff like that. And I was thinking, like, I think the win cons and the density of artifacts are sort of a relevant factor here that we need to think about. So, like, what are the things that Meria does best? It breaks parity on these stacks fixed, like Static Orb and Winter Orb and Trinisphere. And it provides a medium-sized card advantage. I will not say it's a good card advantage engine, which, to explain that further, so I've worked on like basically 3 different versions of this deck. The first one being basically what Surreal has today, very similar, very, very similar lists, because a lot of it was our collaboration.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Second
one is a deck that Charles described as, I can tell you've been playing Ascension, which is literally it's literally all 0 and 1 drop artifact creatures, and playing things like Glimpse of Nature and other things that, like, when a creature ETBs, you draw a card, and the whole point is that, like, they all refund themselves. And then you like storm off. But I found that to be too inconsistent at getting there at a reasonable turn. Although that can be worked on, and I don't have the mental fortitude to really put in the hustle there, but I can send a starter list to anyone interested. But the one that I've come up with today said to me, this spoke to me in the way that like I don't have to ignore the stacks effects that are really good in these colors, like Blood Moon, Magus of the Moon, the ones that Meria breaks parity on, and cards like Tanglewire too. And like I get to use, as I mentioned, all of these artifacts that come on the battlefield and also like have these really interesting static abilities. And this archetype also, in my opinion, gets to ignore the redundancy issue with this color pie, because there's a lot of layering that these Quarkland, for anyone who's like not familiar with KCI combos in general, KCI Quarkland Ironworks allows you to sacrifice an artifact to generate 2 colorless mana. So with cards like Scrap Trawler and Mirror Retriever and Salvager of Ruin, like you're basically sacrificing your creatures, generating mana, bringing things back out of your graveyard. And because Meria is allowing you to like replay all these cards, you're actually generating mana because you play the creature, tap it for a green mana, because once again, Meria allows you to ignore haste. And you're basically making infinite mana with these loops really easily. Then with cards like Reckless Fireweaver or Aetherflux Reservoir or a number of different cards that allow you to like have these payoffs. I have Walking Ballista to use the infinite mana with. So basically any of these infinite recursion loops start generating infinite mana or infinite ETBs or infinite death triggers. And at that point, it's sort of just like whatever one of these payoffs is in your hand is the thing that kills the table, and the specifics really don't matter that much. And it's really interesting because there are certain stacks pieces that you wouldn't think you can play, things like Thorn of Amethyst and Trinisphere and stuff like that. But because KCI lets you sacrifice artifacts,
you can just chuck them.
It kind of does, right? It does the Razakats thing where you're like, yeah, I'll sack my Collector Roof when I'm going for my Razakats combo. And so there's that sort of dynamic going on. And you also kind of get to ignore so like KCI is the best outlet in the deck, right? Like KCI is the thing we're trying to do, but you can make your own KCI with other cards, right? We have cards like Grinding Station. We have Altar of Dementia. I'm playing Slow Bad Goblin Tinkerer, which is just sack an artifact, another artifact is indestructible,
justice
right?
Justice for Slow Bad.
And it's really cool because you can use now these green creature tutors to go get your sack outlets, which you can't normally do with the rest of the deck. So there's a lot of like redundancy and layering. And the idea is that like you can play this sort of like slower stacks of your mid-range game to start things going and slow your opponents down long enough for Meria to get you like the 2 or 3 things you need to just pop off. Right. And I think this archetype feeds into what Meria is trying to do in the command zone a lot better. Just because it's like you're using the artifacts for mana, you're using the artifacts for card advantage while also still locking your opponents in a really tough position without having to like full commit to some extreme thing like the Creature Storm variant. So I found in playtesting that it was definitely yielding more interesting results than anything I had worked on before. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at this list now because this is actually the first time I'm seeing because Ian, you and I had talked about the KCI. I was like,
I made this last night.
Yeah, I know you made this last night because I was like, I hadn't seen this before because this actually this did all the stuff that we wanted to do. Because I'm looking at this now, like, yeah, actually, I'd play this. This actually looks competent.
Looking to protect your cards? Check out our sponsor, Dragon Shield. Last week, I mentioned how I have been using their Petrol Matte sleeves for about 5 years now, but I am officially won over to their new dual matte sleeves after sleeving up the Buick dealership cube and my casual Brea's big, beautiful Buicks EDH deck in them. The fully opaque black interior is just chef's kiss. Absolutely amazing how nice it looks. Like, not only do they make your cards pop on that black background, but the really nice part for me is that the background is fully opaque. Whenever I do a deck check as a judge, I always look to make sure you can't see through the back of the sleeves. And the fully opaque background makes that problem completely go away. And hey, Oktoberfest is right around the corner, so maybe use our affiliate link to pick up some ahead of time and support the show. I recommend the Wraith sleeves personally. They are this really pretty magenta color, and it's what I've sleeved my cube in. So I highly recommend them. So go ahead, go into the description of this video or podcast, wherever you're listening to this. Click on our Dragon Shield affiliate link to get your Dragon Shield dual matte sleeves today while also supporting the channel. Thank you to Dragon Shield for supporting the Mind Sculptors. Thank you to all of the wonderful people who support us over on Patreon. Your continued support is what enables us to continue to bring you quality cEDH content every single week. If you want to listen to next week's episode featuring Mike Bainey from cEDHU and Eminence Gaming, you can become a patron for as low as $2 a month and go check out the full uncut video episode right now. We get into brewing, our process, great resources, things to avoid, things to try and follow. It's a great conversation. And if you want early access to it, go ahead and support us over on Patreon. You will also get access to our patron exclusive Discord server, plus the ability to submit a question to our Dear Sculpty Boy segment. So what are you waiting for? If you aren't a patron already, you can join the Sculpty family at patreon.com/the Mind Sculptors, or you can just check out the link in the description. It's time to check in on our Apple Podcast ratings, and this week we have 4 new ratings. The first is from Aiden.Shower. I hope I'm saying your name right. It says, great way to pass the day. Normally listen on YouTube, but graduated to the podcast. Love, love, love all the content. Full-time dad and worker drone, so this helps me play catch up. I get just a little bit better with every episode. Thanks. Thank you for the rating, and glad we can help you out. Honestly, like that's really the end goal with all of this stuff. The next review is from user Ken Standish. It says, slaps the roof of a Buick. You can fit so many good takes and Nagilo cards in this beauty of a podcast. Good banner, great takes, and even better people. This podcast has it all, and I'm always looking forward to Mondays because it's Sculpty Boy Pod Day. In summation, that's why you should vote for the Mind Sculptors pod as sole survivor of season 43 of cEDH Survivor. Oh, Ken, I love that review. Thank you so much. It's funny because on Saturday night on the most recent episode of SNL, they had a sketch where it actually references Survivor, and Jeff Probst actually came out. And I lost my mind. I was laughing so hard. It was so good. So, Ken, I know you're a Survivor fan. Go check that out. Also, thank you for the review. The next review is from user Runner2DMax. It says, subscribing to the Mind Sculptors is an easier win than getting 20 counters with Simic Ascendancy. These guys make cEDH approachable, have relevant, timely content, and interview top-tier guests often. Whether you are curious about or steeped in EDH content, hit subscribe. You will not regret it. Trust me, I'm definitely not a demure informant. Well, thank you for that, and I'm glad you're totally not a demure informant. 100%. Yeah. And our last review is from Apple user MTG Pastor. It says, this is a girthy good podcast. Girthy, wow, quite a word to use there. Perfect to sit down with your Raycon wireless earbuds and absorb the wisdom that is Arden. All seriousness, fantastic podcast for cEDH players old and new. Best space for hearing from the pros on how to improve your game. Thanks for all the hard work that goes into this podcast. Thank you for that review. Also, Ray J, if you want to sponsor the podcast, feel free. I will gladly talk about Raycon earbuds. But thank you, all 4 of you who left reviews this week. And remember that if you leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts in between now and next week's episode, I will read it out here on the show. So with all of that, let's get back into today's episode with Cobble, Surreal, and Ian. You know what? Let's just get into the comparison. Let's go ahead and look at Planeswalkers. We talked about this a little bit. All 3 of you are playing Karn the Great Creator. And I think that is objectively correct. It is a good card, and you have creatures to back it up. And as
no notes, Karn good.
Yeah, it's
also this deck. No matter what iteration, this deck feeds Dockside. Karn says, "Hey, don't worry about it, friend."
Yeah.
Right.
So let's look here at the cards you all share. There's not many. You share 4 cards. It is Dockside Extortionist, Goblin Engineer, Imperial Recruiter, and Phyrexian Revoker. Those are the 4 shared cards between all 3 lists.
For creatures.
For creatures.
Yeah, well, that's what the section we're in.
Yeah.
Cobble, take us through your creature suite here.
So, like I said before, we've got welders, and we are including a lot of things that synergize very well. So, for instance, there's the battered golem, which is essentially the same. It's very similar to Grinding Station, and it untaps both Grinding Station and Battered Golem. Untap every time an artifact enters the battlefield, not when you cast.
Not just yours.
Yep.
Right. So if I cast a Dockside and I create 6 treasures, then my Battered Golem and my Grinding Station are going to untap 6 times, which means that you can impulse 6 cards right off the top and then have the treasures to be able to, cast whatever it is that you're pulling, or you can generate a ton of mana and, pipe that mana into any of the outlets that you can use to, Finale of Devastation, or to cast or to use Sensei's Dividing Top over and over and over again, and actually draw cards. There's just a ton that you can do with that, and if you've got Clock of Omens in play and you have Grinding Station and either something that copies Grinding Station or you have Battered Golem too, then that's already basically you draw your deck, because you have an artifact come into play, and then now you have 2 untapped artifacts, and it's very, very easy with all of the landfall kinds of triggers that we have with Tireless Provisioner and Tireless Tracker. Tireless Tracker is another infinite mana outlet that lets you draw your deck. But both of those, every time they see a land come into play, they create an artifact, which then untaps the Grinding Station and Battered Golem, which is very easy to break if you have a Shaya, because all of your creatures that are coming into play are lands, and those lands are then creating artifacts, which then untap things, and it very, very quickly spirals. But there's the Ashaya combo, so Ashaya and Quirion Ranger, which that often generates infinite mana, but also with any landfall outlet is going to infinitely either create artifacts or draw cards with Valakut, etc. Scare Tiller is a wild inclusion, but it's excellent in this context because you tap it with the commander. If you don't have the commander, you can still use it with Clock of Omens, but when you tap it, you can grab a land from your graveyard or from your hand and just put it onto the battlefield tapped. And the tapped, we're able to get around that because we're also running Amulet of Vigor and we're running Tiller.
Are you on Lotus Cobra?
Yeah.
Yes, we're on Lotus Cobra as well. So there's just lots of different interconnections where it's not like things fit together in one way. There's a ton of synergy with how all of the different pieces come together.
So I think that's an interesting transition over now to Surreal, looking at your creatures.
Yeah.
You have your unique creatures are Arbor Elf, Collector Oof, Snoop, Elvish Spirit Guide, Endurance, Ewit, Goblin Recruiter, Hyrax, Kogla, Mog Fanatic. The card that I am the biggest fan of in your deck actually is Sereth the Viper's Fang.
Boy, howdy.
That's a solid magic card.
Good card.
Yeah, that's really good.
Sharpshooter.
So take us through some of this here. Like we talked about this a little bit earlier, but it looks very much like a prototypical Gruul deck.
Yeah. When we started talking about this podcast for today, I feel bad because this is my this is my personal opinion, is that should you build this deck? Should you try and play this deck? And my answer is not right now. You should probably give it like 6 months or something, because I know we had alluded to it very early on in this cast, but it's a very strong likelihood that we're going to see support for red-green artifacts
in the very near future.
In the next set, or at the very least in the near future. I wouldn't be surprised to see some bits and pieces of this maybe in a Commander product at some point in the next year, but very least, I think we're in the next set, Brothers War, we're going to see support for this.
I think it's very safe to say that in Brothers War, we're going to immediately get something that pushes this in a very positive direction.
Yeah, and I think you can see that just from, hey, what's going to happen? Also, that new Transformers card that was spoiled, that will be in Brothers War, has the same kind of text, which is non-token artifacts. And so I think that's where they'll end up pushing red-green. That aside, with the current card pool that you have right now, I opted for a very prototypical Gruul base, which is you have your Mana Dork suite. You have your creature-based interaction suite with your Manglehorn, your Rex Sage. You have your, bit of recursion and utility in things like Eternal Witness and Endurance and Kogla. You have the Kiki combo for Hyrax and Kiki. And then you have the Snoop pile. The Snoop pile is the Snoop pile. You can effectively ignore that and not worry about it. Because whatever you wanted to put in the Snoop pile could be any other form of a win condition. I opted for Snoop. I think it's the easiest thing that I have right now in these colors to crack with Meria.
Clean tutor,
because it has multiple layers of tutor. There's a lot to like on the surface for Snoop. It just runs into the issue of it's fragile, it's easily disrupted, it's clunky, and it's a lot of dead slots. Mind you, I also have a backup line in the Snoop pile. I think you have to play that. If you're playing Snoop, you have to play the full package. And that often includes like 10 cards. So there's a lot of gristle on this cut of meat that we're looking at here in the creature section.
I love gristle. That's some of my favorite part of a steak.
Can't relate.
It's my favorite green black commander for sure.
That was good.
It's banned though. Isn't Crystal banned?
Nice.
That was good.
Nice.
That was okay. Solid follow up.
Can you talk about Kogla?
Oh boy, Donkey Kong.
It's not a Surreal deck if they're not playing Kogla.
It's.
I mean, where's the lie though? Like,
no, I really can't stop playing. Like, there's, I've built the deck if there's Diddy Kong, Donkey Kong, and Vivian Monsters Advocate. And now.
Wait, what's Diddy Kong?
Diddy Kong is Ragavan.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll buy it.
Well, and then now Cranky Kong is Silverback Elder. I'm just adding to the Kong family. I actually have considered getting alters of those 3 cards.
I love that.
Just Diddy Kong, Donkey Kong, and Cranky Kong.
This is my new favorite thing. Sign me up.
Oh man, yeah, you could fit Gorilla Shaman in this, and I don't know who Gorilla Shaman is in terms of the.
We should all quit monkeying around though.
Oh,
That's funny because Kogla's not a monkey. Kogla's an ape.
Right.
Yeah.
You are running Simian Spirit Guide.
Yeah, that's actually so. This is such a tangent. Yeah. No. Simian Spirit Guide is part of the. Okay, so did you know? All right. I went down a rabbit hole when they printed Silverback Elder, and I found out the entire canon history of the Donkey Kong franchise and family. Cranky Kong is so for anyone, boy. So the original Donkey Kong shows up in Mario.
Yeah.
Right? Because
it's Cranky Kong.
The big gorilla that throws down. Canonically, that's a gorilla.
Mario shows up in the original Donkey Kong.
Yes, but that
truth.
I think it's actually called Mario. Like, it's actually listed as a Mario game.
Mario Brothers came after Donkey Kong.
Correct.
Okay.
Respect your elders, Surreal.
Respecting my elders. Yeah, I am the youngest one here. So I went and I found the entire history of the Donkey Kong family and like the lineage. So Cranky Kong is the original gorilla that throws barrels down at Mario. And so that's not actually the Donkey Kong that a lot of us know as Donkey Kong. That is a younger version of Cranky Kong. Cranky Kong has a wife.
My wife.
Cranky Kong has a wife. Whose name I do not remember off the top of my head.
Shame on you.
I'll go pull her up.
Pretty
I'll
sexist.
do it now.
It's the fact that you didn't know to start.
Yeah.
I'm just disappointed.
So Cranky Kong has a wife. She dies in the story, and she comes back as a ghost. That's Simian's Spirit Guide.
Oh my god!
Wow.
Because there's only one.
I feel enriched.
You shouldn't.
We went on a
waste
journey.
the last 5 minutes of your life. No, there's only one. There's only one canonically dead and comes back as a ghost Kong in the Donkey Kong franchise, and it's Cranky Kong's wife, and that's my Simian Spirit Guide.
I can't believe we've officially scrapped this episode. Thank you, everybody.
Quick, Ian, tell us about your deck.
Yeah, tell us about your creature suite there, buddy.
Your
old
KCI
pal.
loops.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Your Cranky Kong.
And with that, I was never invited back to this podcast.
Hey everybody, it's me, comedian MTG, also known as Honky Kong.
Well, that about wraps things up, everybody. Thank you for joining us this week, guys.
No, but actually,
anyways, my creature package. So there's a couple things in between. So I'm playing some of the stacks pieces that I believe Surreal you're also on.
Yeah.
So I'm on things like Magus the Moon, Manglehorn, stuff like that. As I mentioned, I kind of like this mid-rangier until you combo game plan. One card that's really interesting in this list is Lodestone Golem, because you can actually KCI combo through this stacks piece. And you can also do that with Thorn of Amethyst, which is the idea that you can so aggressively break parity on those. Yeah, you can have this artifact combo that goes through those two things is pretty nice. And then a lot of the other things that are like strictly to my list are because they are KCI combo pieces, like Slowbad or a Scrapyard Recombiner or a Scrap Trawler or Salvager of Ruin, or the payoffs like Reckless Fireweaver, like we talked about beforehand, and Bergie, because Bergie like is kind of like a backup Meria for the KCI combos that like sort of ensures that these things happen, and it's a good advantage engine, and a plethora of reasons why Bergie is really good. I also think this is maybe the best cEDH Treasure Nabber deck that exists right now, and that makes me really happy because I wanted to play that deck for a really long time.
It's thank goodness.
How many cEDH decks run Treasure Nabber?
I wanted that card to be a cEDH card for so long.
It just didn't work out.
Your opponents can't tap their Soul Rings because you're like, I'll sack them to KCI or Grinding Station. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah,
So we have one card that we're all using in our sorcery
suite. Which is Finale of Devastation.
Finale.
And you're also playing Sun Demise, but I think Sun Demise kind of explains itself because it's pretty good.
The Sudden Demise explains the Sudden Demise.
What color are you expecting to use it against the most? I'd assume like white.
Green. Right? So I am not really? Running Dorks.
So he has to kill Oof.
So, Oof, Mana Dorks, and White Hate Bears are, generally the types of thing. Drannith Magistrate is not very good to play against.
Yeah. Do you really care about needing Sudden Demise then? Like, would you not rather just like a Rolling Earthquake?
I like being able to not hit all of my artifact creatures or not hit red creatures I have in play. And, just be very specific with, I'm going to take out Talia and Drannith Magistrate and then proceed to combo out because my creatures are all still there.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. Surreal, you're playing Green Sun Zenith, and I think I can chalk that up to you're playing the traditional Gruul creature deck.
I have more green creatures than either of the other two lists here. Green Sun, specifically, I've got Oof. Green Sun works with Oof.
Yeah, I mean, that's enough right there.
I think my list really boils down to I decided to play Oof, which kind of comes back to what we originally said, which is the biggest question you ask yourself when you're building this deck is to Oof or not to Oof. And I decided to Oof. Yep. And that's why my deck looks the way that's why my deck looks the way it is because I decided to Oof, and that's a really simple explanation for why the deck is what it is. But Oof is that game warping of a card.
Mm-hmm. Right. Let's look at the instant suite here because you're just playing Wheel of Fortune, and I think Wheel of Fortune makes a whole whale of sense.
Turns out when you're playing a deck that wants cards in the graveyard and also will dump a handful of artifacts, Wheel of Fortune doesn't suck.
Yeah. Let's look at...
Also, I'm playing Underworld Breach, so Underworld Breach, Wheel of Fortune, yada yada, fill in the blank here.
So anyway.
Yeah, so instance-wise, I have because my artifact count is so low, it shows up in my creature section and it shows up in my instance section, which is primarily devoted to more removal.
You and I are both running comparable amounts for sure.
Yeah. I actually am surprised to not see Court of Calling in your list, Ian.
It's the thing is, like, Court of Calling is really good with decks that have green pips. I have a lot of colorless creatures and not that many creatures in general.
You got 27.
Yeah, 27 is good.
But you have artifacts, and all of your artifacts give you green.
Tap for green, which means even the artifact creatures that don't tap for green with Meria
that's fair.
out.
I guess for me, I don't need one creature. Like, I'd rather play Shared Summons in this list specifically than
Court of
Calling.
I
also valid.
Yeah,
they are in my considering board for sure. Along with 69 other cards. Hey, nice. Didn't even realize.
One card that actually didn't show up in any of our lists that I've had a lot of people that I want to at least talk about here is Rending Volley. And does Rending Volley, which kills a large number of relevant issues for this deck in terms of insurmountable problems that outside of Galvanic Blast, you don't have a clean answer to. Namely, that is Linvala, Keeper of Silence. Drannith's a real pain in your butt, but you do have Lightning Bolt, you do have a Braid, you can clear Drannith otherwise. Linvala, though, shuts your entire deck down because all of the activated abilities are on your commander. And Rending Volley also does, it cleans up a lot.
It's just so narrow because like how many, like it runs, I think I obviously built a list, but we're not showing it here and I'm not discussing it too much. But
sure.
Like, I think it's the Carpet of Flowers thing that we've talked about previously, right, Ian? Where it's like, how many times have you sat down with the Carpet of Flowers and it's just not active? It does
nothing.
I think that's one of the things that you are going to see in.
I also think you get hurt, specifically your version, like way more by Linvala than I think either Cobble or I.
I do.
Like I can KCI combo through.
Oh no, Linvala's going to shoot me in the foot.
Yeah, for sure. Like your main win con shuts off your commander. And exactly.
Which is an argument for maybe running a little bit more issues of like, okay, I have to find a way to deal with the Linvala.
I do think that there are good ways of dealing with Linvala that are not as narrow as Rending Volley.
There's Galvanic Blast, right?
But I think Rending Volley is actually pretty good. I'm not gonna lie.
I don't think it's bad.
It hits white and blue.
Also, something to consider recently printed in Kamigawa is, I believe, Volt Surge.
Something along those lines, yeah.
It's either
something
a shock,
like that.
But if you sack an artifact, it does 4 damage instead.
I'm pulling it up.
Yeah, and obviously, I think we have more than enough artifacts to spare in this deck.
I'd play that.
I specifically recommend people to look at Rending Volley if certain things are like if Drannith specifically completely cripples your deck. I've also suggested that for anti-Winota tech, anti-Urza tech. So like there definitely are very important functions of that card. It doesn't necessarily like it depends on what you're seeing a lot of enough. And it's the same thing with Veil Summer Carpet of Flowers, right? If you're playing a mid-range meta all the time,
you're playing on team turn 3 all the time.
Hesitating. Right. So for me, I'm playing in more open metas. I don't play those cards. And that's like a point of contention with deck builders that I've run into before. Same thing with Rending Volley, right? Depends on what you're seeing.
Any closing thoughts from you guys?
Yeah. So Meria is a really unique commander. I'm glad that it exists. I'm glad that it gives a variety to the Gruul color pie, which has been traditionally one that I have not held back from kind of dunking on.
No, don't worry. No one's held back on dunking at it. Even
me. It's tough because the color, it just contradicts themselves so much, and they're very at odds. And it's nice to see something new in the space. Something that's maybe a little more red focused too, which is interesting because like a lot of Gruul so far has just been like green, and I guess the red is there too. Maybe
it's green with haste. It's green with haste and a little bit of.
It's green with haste and Blood Moon.
Green with haste, Blood Moon, and a little bit of direct damage mixed in.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm very happy that the commander exists. As we've mentioned a couple times, there is definitely like the upward potential of the decks and cards being printed for them having a lot more potential moving forward. And I think it's also not a simple card. Like, for example, the KCI build that we're talking about, I like kind of just came up with in the past 48 hours, and this commander has been out for months. Right. And I've seen so many things like that happen with commanders where people are building something one way, one direction, or even a plethora of different ways. And then someone stumbles onto the right thing and goes,
yeah.
Shoot.
That's kind of how I felt when I saw the list today. I went, yeah, this.
I don't think mine's the end all be all, but I think it's new and it's different. So we'll see what happens.
The thing is, everyone wants a lot. So many people just want this to work.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. But those are my thoughts.
It eventually will.
Yes. This is one of those commanders where it is very much, this will work. eventually.
Well, that about wraps things up for us here this week. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Thank you also to Cobblepot, Ian, and Surreal for taking the time to record this episode with me. We had an absolute blast. Took a ton of time to record and went over a ton of stuff, but it was so much fun. I'm so glad I got to have that conversation with you guys. Ian, Surreal, Cobble, you guys are some of my favorite people in this community, so it was a great time getting to talk this through with you guys. If you liked this episode or any of our other episodes, please make sure to rate the show on whatever podcast platform you are on. Or if you're listening on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and leave a comment down in the description what your favorite part of the show was or your thoughts on the lists. Just leave a comment, something. I would also like to thank our top tier patrons, Justin, Adam Hamden, David Snavely, Dionysius, Jason Bialik, Josh Stein, Matt Boehner, and Senior Coupon. If you too would like to support the show, you can head on over to patreon.com/The Mind Sculptors or check out the link in the description. And remember, you can check out next week's full episode, completely uncut. It's live right there right now. You can also listen to the entire uncut, all the goofs and gaffs of today's episode over on Patreon right now as well. Thank you again for joining us, and from all of us here at The Mind Sculptors, I'm Callahan, and we'll see you next time.